I wasn't always deaf. I could hear my mother sing me happy birthday, my dad telling me how to treat a girl, and my baby sisters crying in the night. Then, as things usually do, something went wrong. A couple of years ago, my parents were driving home from my grandma's house on the other side of town. It was late at night, and it was raining awfully hard for a late April spring. My dad told me that my sister had been crying in the back seat and that my mother had turned around to comfort her when a tow truck had T-boned their car. It's ironic, really, that the vehicle that killed my mother was also the vehicle that towed our disfigured car to the compound. I remember my dad coming home late that night, dried tears on his cheeks. I was instantly worried, since I had never seen him cry before. Where's Mom? Where's Olivia? I asked my dad in a worried tone. My dad dropped his head and fresh tears rolled down his face. Your mom and sister didn't make it from Grandma's, he managed to say through a shaky voice. They're with Grandpa now. I knew exactly what this meant. If my father hadn't sat me down, I'm sure my legs would have buckled from underneath me. My vision became blurry through the salty water building up in my eye sockets. I felt my dad wrap his arms around me and attempt to comfort me. I could feel his jaw move against my head that rested on his shoulder. But I ignored what he said and tried to contemplate what I had just heard. I don't really remember how long we sat there, but I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, it was early morning and I was in my bed. The events of the night before instantly rushed into my head and a sense of sadness ruined the beautiful morning sun. I dressed myself in clothes and headed downstairs for breakfast with the only immediate family member I had left. My dad was already sitting at the table downstairs with a bowl of cereal in front of him that looked untouched. I wanted to try and comfort my dad the way he comforted me. As I took the last step down the stairs, I said, I stopped moving my mouth. Nothing. I didn't hear my own voice. My dad looked up from his soggy cereal at me. He had dark circles under his eyes, a sign of no sleep the previous night. I must have looked terribly frightened because he gave me a very concerned look. I tried to talk again. Nothing. I had gone deaf. We visited the doctor the very same day as my grandmother came to take care of the funeral plans for my mom and Olivia. Turns out, due to the psychological trauma of losing not just one close family member, but two, I lost my hearing. Apparently, this was my way of coping with the situation. I had never heard another sound again. That was until a couple months ago. I was walking in a park near a playground with my guide dog Rocco, who alerts me for dangerous noises or situations that I would otherwise be unaware of because of my hearing disability. He was a beautiful black lab who did his job extremely well. On numerous occasions, he helped me avoid being hit by cars while crossing the street, or runners while doing our daily walks. Anyway, while we were making our way past the playground, there were numerous kids playing. They had smiles on their faces and mouths open as if they were laughing. But I heard nothing. That is, until the sound of a scream pierced my ears. I was so surprised, I jumped and nearly choked Rocco by yanking so hard on his leash. I put both my hands near my ears and snapped them repeatedly to see if I was, by some miracle, cured. The same silence I had known for so many years was still there. Then there it was again, the screaming. A cry, that of a baby's wail. I hadn't heard such a sound since I was little, when Olivia would cry to be held. I scanned the playground to find the culprit. Sitting on a bench was a mother, holding her baby who didn't look much older than a couple months, wrapped in a blanket. All I could hear was her crying. And that's when I started to cry. As I walked home, I sobbed. I sobbed tears of joy. I knew I didn't have to hear silence any longer. I knew exactly how I was going to do it. Over the next few weeks, I would hide in the nearby bushes next to the playground. I would wait until a kid came close before I would jump out and scare them, causing them to scream. I loved the way it sounded. The breaking of the silence that I had known for so long was almost erotic. I figured the look of pure terror as the child would turn and run also added to the fun. I was addicted, but as most addicts do, they either get caught or they seek help. I got caught. After a couple of weeks, some of the dads found out what I had been doing and they chased me out of the park. They even continued to chase me for yet another mile outside of it before stopping to catch their breath. In between those breaths, yelling, "You better stay away, you freak," or "If I catch you near my kid or any other, I'll make sure it's impossible for you to have them," if you know what I mean. I had my run with the kids. I needed something more. The cries of children weren't enough. Eventually, I came up with a new idea. To fuel my addiction, I needed louder, more real screams. That night, I went to the worst part of town, and I found my first victim. A young 20-something-year-old girl with long legs and a short, dark skirt on. She was easy to catch. I lured her over to my car, showed her some money, and she was in, and we were on our way back to my place. I think she tried to talk to me while I drove, but I couldn't hear anything, obviously. So I just avoided eye contact. I think she took it as nervousness because she started to rub my leg. That's when I broke her index finger. She screamed. A horrendously beautiful cry. I remember the way the snap of her finger felt in my hand. It was almost like breaking a carrot. It was that easy. She tried to run, but luckily you can only unlock my '94 Accord from the driver's side. I decided I wouldn't be able to get her to my house without drawing too much attention, so we stayed in my car. I found a nice, quiet, abandoned area underneath a bridge, just outside of town, and shut off the engine. It was really hard to keep her from flailing around. She even hit me in the face a few good times. But the adrenaline from the sound regarding her siren of a scream kept me going. Using the seatbelt, I crisscrossed it around her body, pinning her arms back. In between her sobs, she would ask such pitiful questions like, "Why are you doing this? You don't need to pay me, I'll just leave." She didn't understand what I wanted. No amount of sexual favors or money could compare to how I felt when I would escape the silence in my own head. I could see tears pouring out of her eyes as her mascara ran. This was absolutely beautiful. The rush I felt made me feel so good. I took my time breaking the rest of her fingers so that I might savor each and every wail to its fullest extent. I even got a little carried away and ended up breaking her right arm. After a couple of hours, I felt I got my full satisfaction. She had just about passed out from the shock of pain. So I opened her door and let her fall out before I drove home, a gratified smile on my face. I was beaming. The next few months had been like this, up until about a week ago. I found that not even the screams from a stab in the stomach are enough to quench my thirst for the vibrations in my ears. That was until I accidentally cut myself with a knife while making a nice veggie salad. I remember how the stimulating sound of my own scream felt as it gave my whole body goosebumps. Never have I felt so alive when I felt so much pain. It hurt pretty bad when I broke my first few fingers. But as I've been moving to breaking my ankle, and even dislocating my shoulder by slamming it into a wall, the sound of my own shrieks give me enough of a rush to completely enjoy it. I've had to visit the emergency room a couple of times from too much blood loss. It's all worth it though. As long as I can hear myself scream, it is all completely worth it.